Okay, so I want to start with the good news. The good news is that the awards and the bar both happen after this session. So there's something at the end of it to motivate you. But I want to start by first, thanking the panel, and I want to say thanks to Jason for joining us live out there. A quick one that, is a context that when you look at the three technologies which are there, you have chatbots, you have augmented reality, you have virtual reality. All three of them are, at early stages of development. And one of the things about technology is that we often tend to say that, what is that quantum thing that is happening in this year? Chances are that we are going to ask the same question over 2, 3, 4, 5 years to see it evolve. So technology really doesn't come in fully formed, it sort of evolves, and that's where this technology is today. But I want to sort of really say that in my mind, the context is that if you look at chatbots, that's probably the one which is getting adopted the most, but it's not necessarily the one which is going to prevail eventually in the long term as the only source of improving process and efficiency. Chatbots today need to actually also start using the emotional part of it. So that's one part of where chatbots are. You look at augmented reality, there is a great possibility of how we can use it in many processes, such as onboarding and stuff like that. You hold your phone, you look at a person, look at the data about the person, and all that. That's possible to be done today through augmented reality. Think Pokemon meets HR kind of a scenario. So that's a possibility. The third aspect is about virtual reality. Many instances of people in especially medical profession, oil rigs, all of that, using this to build skills, also to build emotional intelligence. So that's where the technology is, and I'm going to start by asking Smriti, when you look at these three technologies and compare this side by side, is there one which you think has moved ahead? And in what way do you see it, leading? Is there a particular sector that you think is doing a lot of the adoption, or, kind of HR process which is really getting disrupted? How would you describe that?
So Abhijit, you rightly said that chatbot is the most ubiquitous of the lot. But if you look at research tells us that this AR, VR technology market is $200 billion by 2020. And when they break it up into AR, VR, VR is almost like maybe 3 times the size of AR. And what's the constraint in VR? In VR, you are tethered to your spot, whereas in AR, you can move around, right? And quickly, just to differentiate between the two, VR is immersive, and AR is literally you're getting your digital data set augmented onto your physical reality. Now, to your question, is there a sector which has been early adopters? Actually, if anything to do with safety, you pointed oil rigs, right? And if you look at the oldest usage of that is really your flight simulator. It's too risky to get the pilot to learn on the job, right? So any on the job where the risk level is too high. So flight simulation has been going on for decades. And the other very obvious candidate for this is healthcare. How you are doing surgeries and how you're transferring knowledge. In one of the previous discussions, I was just sharing that one of the medical schools in London actually, this was a good 2-3 years back, they actually streamed into the VR headsets of their young doctors cancer colon operation. So the transfer of knowledge was very, very immersive. So I would say healthcare, and I would say flights. And I just want to give this up quickly, but I think a point we could debate and interact together is the biggest thing these technologies do is expand industry boundaries. So an industry, the industry that thinks they are in healthcare, they actually end up doing something else. And maybe later I can share an example. So the power of this technology really lies in moving the industry boundaries from what they thought were their core competencies to something different.
Great, thanks. So Jason, if you can hear me, my question is to you that, when you look at technology which is, across different kinds of businesses, different kinds of sectors, do you see one particular technology taking the lead in the other? Where do you see the canvas? What is moving faster and what is likely to move faster? So it's really like saying, if you are taking a bet on one of those technologies, which one would you place your bet on?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. Good. I'm glad to say I'm not a betting man. But if I had to say that I was actually making a bet on one of the technologies, the technology that's easiest from an adoption standpoint and closest to what's real today is the whole concept of the chatbot and artificial intelligence. And what we're seeing in that particular category is that organizations that have been spending the last 2 to 3 years on really building a solid foundation, a solid foundation of data, combined with knowledge articles, combined with processes, are truly now able to say, we're using chatbots and artificial intelligence, to take things and put them online in a way where the workforce is experiencing things in a better way than they ever have before. And for the first time ever, we're changing the function of HR from people who are answering questions to people that are solving business problems. So I think that the AI/chatbot area has the fastest growth and is the closest to adoption, and it already is being adopted in many of our global customers today. I'd say that AR and VR, those are further behind, and I think that I hate to say this, and that this isn't going to bust the bubble of people, I hope, but those are problems looking for a solution, or solutions looking for a problem, I guess is the better way to say it. We're still trying to find the best use cases for those technology. There definitely is a case in learning, there definitely is a case in recruiting, but we're still proving ourselves out. From a culture change standpoint, what's most important is thinking about how we work as consumers. As consumers, we're used to AI, we're used to chatbots already in how we do almost everything in our daily lives. That's why those technologies will be adopted sooner in the business.
I'm going to, question for you is, Jason, let me just ask you a follow-up question, which is chatbot really, a Google search kind of a thing just done through a fancy interface? Is that what it is? Where this development is right now, that it sort of looks at text and speaks it out? Is that what it really is right now, or is there something more to it?
No. It's much more than that. Chatbot is really Chatbot is really a tool that's used to create the digital workforce experience. So if I take our old school transactions, some of us are in love with our self-service. And if you remember, I was at SHRM Tech 2 years ago, and I said, don't call it self-service, call it direct access. Yet I'm sure many of you still call it self-service, and people still love it. Unfortunately, in the future, employees aren't going to go into transactional tools to do work. They're going to do their work in a tool that's most natural to them. And now, hi, I'm on Skype today. And whether it's Skype, whether it's SMS text, whatever it is, that's where people are going to work. So this is not just taking context and putting it online in a way where I can, quote unquote, speak to it. This is truly taking open context, open text, combining it with transactions, and truly giving and creating the concept of a frictionless experience for the employee. That's what's going to drive adoption. That's what's going to shift us to addiction. So, for us to say it's the next generation of the transaction is it's not even fair. It's really saying we're taking the transaction, we're augmenting it with knowledge, we're augmenting it with content, we're augmenting it with process DNA. And for the first time ever, we're saying that chatbots and AI are not technology. They're truly digital. And they're truly changing the way that people and processes work in organizations more than they are being a piece of technology.
Thanks. Srijata, my question to you is, when you look at these three technologies, what, according to you, is the strongest business case why should somebody be investing in this? If I'm an early startup, if I'm looking, I'm really thinking about the cost of doing this, and it's technology which is still going to evolve over a span of time. So it'll keep changing. Is it worth doing it now? Should I just wait? How do you view it? What's the business case for this?
That's a great question, Abhijit. I think fundamentally we have to see how technology is really evolved and impacting every transaction that we are doing. We are living very differently in our day-to-day lives, right? Yesterday, my father came in from Calcutta to Bangalore, and I called him before he took his flight. He's 80 years old, and he said, I have decided that I'm going to fly digital this time. I said, okay, are you going to teletransport yourself? He said, no, not yet, but I have decided I'm not going to take a printout, and I'm going to walk through without a printout and show my smartphone. For my father, that's almost like teletransporting himself, because he has finally trusted a technology to do something for him. And it's a big leap. And it was a very insightful moment for me to say that how differently we are living for somebody, an 80-year-old gentleman who has had a triplicate copy of everything in his life, including his tickets. If I translate that to the workplace, we cannot ignore that. We are living very differently, and the workplaces, the enterprises are changing. So the business case is as simple as that. Sometimes in many organizations, if you walk in, from a technology perspective, you almost feel that you have gone back to the 80s, because technology often has not caught up. I think the business case is quite evident. The other important thing that we are living in a connected world which is generating data all the time. Why does AI work? It works because we have data. And data, if you're not using that data as an enterprise, as a business, to really drive your business goals, to get more customers, to drive more learning for your people, to drive a better experience for your people, it's a big opportunity loss, because the data is there, it is connected, it is available very, very cheap now. And that's a big shift that has happened, because data and data processing costs have come down very significantly, which is why we are sitting here and being able to talk this, because companies can make huge investments, because processing power and processing costs have also come down quite significantly. So the environment has brought us here to this point where the opportunity lies to implement these technologies and drive the value. I think that's the fundamental business case in my mind.
Yes, Smriti.
Thanks. So I was reading, is the voice echoing a lot at the back? Can you hear at the back clearly? Okay, thank you. So I was reading a case about DHL employing augmented reality in their warehouses. Now, apparently in logistic firms, warehouses make 20% of the overall costs. And within the warehouse, for an employee to check, from which shelf to pick up which product and put it in a box, that's like 65% of their costs. So they introduce augmented reality and fairy tale, happy ending, everybody went home happy. But the point here is, when productivity is increased and the employee feels engaged, is that technology not HR technology? So even though it wasn't specifically called HR, it was business, because they were being taught, and this augmented reality not only told them which shelf to go to, because instead of looking at manual lists, it then told them the shortest route to the next product, right? So now the employee is walking lesser and he's like satisfied. So if you think about it, fundamentally, any technology that improves the level of satisfaction, which logically any one of us will feel if we have had a productive day at work, then to me that is HR technology.
So so here is my question to the audience, and I'd love to hear 3 or 4 responses. If you could just give a quick one-line opinion on this. She spoke about the power of data in HR. My question always has been that, when we keep hearing about big data in HR, is that fact or fiction? And the reason for that is, when we say big data, we are really talking about massive amounts of data other than, what we've collected through the forms and all, which is static data. Big data by definition begins when you're beginning to collect real-time data. You're looking at sensors, you're looking at analytics of, through multiple sources, and you're integrating, let's say sales data, finance data, marketing data, the profitability, all this when you blend together. Potentially even then the size of the data for an average organization is not huge. So the question I have for you is, artificial intelligence actually functions well based on data. In which case, is this something that's going to be a long time before we can start really leveraging the power of chatbots, AI-driven chatbots in HR? What do you think? Anyone who can talk about an example from their own workspace? Yes, sir, your hand was up first. Can somebody give a mic here? Is that possible? A mic to this gentleman here? And if you raise your hand at the back, then we'll have the mic over to you so that we can hear your responses. Yes, sir. If you could just give me your name and your response.
Yeah, my name is Girish. I represent e-learning Carnival. As far as artificial intelligence is concerned for HR and big data is concerned, we have to divide entire HR into at least two categories: very large organizations, maybe 50,000 people and more, and smaller and medium organizations. For smaller and medium organizations, AR and big data is a distant dream. They do not have data at all. Employees are very reluctant to put data into it, and even a lot of them do not have even basic data like job functions.
So you're saying the size of the organization is a determinant. Okay,
Yeah.
Can we hear another opinion, sir? Anybody who has a different opinion, sir, ma'am, anyone? We can, yeah, Ramesh?
Hi, I'm Ramesh. I work with Facebook. I think often we think about AI and we kind of complicate our lives. There's a lot of little things that we can do to simplify and make our employees' lives much easier. I'll give you a simple example. In Facebook, we've got this bot called a conference room booking bot. Because we found that often people book conference rooms and don't turn up. And so there's conference rooms on the one side that are empty, and on the other side there's people who don't have a conference room. And so what we said is, every time somebody needs a conference room and books it, they have to check in to the conference room using the bot in the first 10 minutes. And if they don't, we release the conference room to somebody else who can use it. This doesn't require AI. All it requires is the bot talk to our calendar tool and our conference room booking software, and we can directly start impacting the productivity of our employees. So these little things, and we have over 100 different bots that we use for things like scheduling interviews, visitor registration, etc., that I can talk about. But these little things can go a long way to make lives easier for our employees. And I want to trigger HR folks a little bit on. When we sell to customers, or when we have customers, we spend a long time with our customers doing focus groups, interviews, trying to understand what can we do to improve the lives of our customers. How much do we do that with our own employees? When was the last time HR went and did a focus group or said, tell me about your typical day and how can I save you potentially 30 minutes by automating something for you?
Umesh, you're provoking too many people in the audience with that question.
Okay, Ramesh, if you are provoked, why don't you answer that question? So what is your response to that?
I think that horse left the barn about 15 years back. In all mature companies with good practices, HR absolutely connects with its employees. And there are just so many methodologies to do it, from in-person to skips to connects to pulses, which could be, in fact, if anything, there is a connect fatigue. It could be the other way around. So I'll just sort of...
Yeah.
I think, I just like to, as my person, I like to simplify things a little bit. So you said AI is a complex term, we are overcomplicating it. In its simplest form, what AI, the way I understand is that you need something to learn, a machine that can learn something, comprehend it, and act. It's as simple as that. And learning can be through visual, so through a camera, through text, which is you're typing something and the machine reads it, or it could be sensory, which is facial, etc. And you have
could be
technology.
voice.
It could be anything. Then using that data, it comprehends, creates a pattern, which is, it could at the simplest could be just a regression, a correlation between A and B. So if A is happening, B should happen, and then act. It's very simple as that. You may call it, if you see a bot also operates on the same principles. What has happened over the years is technology has evolved and language recognition has become much more evolved. Some of the programs are very evolved. So computers can actually understand almost the way humans are speaking. In the past, Abhijit, when chatbots first started, you had to draft the question in a very specific way. Only then the computer would understand. Now you can make grammatical mistakes, and like a human being, the computer will understand. And that's how the evolution of the technology has happened. The comprehension and the ability of the technology to comprehend has evolved, and it will continue to evolve and almost become human-like. And then you can ask the machine to act on anything. That's just a programming, and we have been doing programming for the last 50 years. So in a very simple way, we can look at using AI in any part of our business or any part of an HR process by using these three technologies.
Question, Jason, for you is, when you look at where, language-related interactions are there with chatbots, etc., one of the things that I think as a stage of evolution is chatbots need to move from, a place where they are simply responding to questions. It's like, again, they are able to comprehend the scenario, and they need to move to a scenario where they comprehend the emotion behind the question. For example, being able to understand sarcasm, being able to understand happiness, being able to understand that. So would it be fair to say that technology evolves by moving from the outside to inside the human being? Is that a natural state of progression? What's your take, Jason?
Yeah, thank you for asking the question, and I love the way you framed that up. What's really important to understand, and the key word that we use, and this is coming in my new book in June as well, is the concept of how do we deliver empathy digitally. So I'm going to say it again. How do we deliver empathy digitally? And what's most important about delivering empathy digitally is understanding that every organization, every entity has their own DNA or their own signature that they use when it comes to how do they want to communicate with their workforce. There's another phrase that we use, which is, are we delivering white glove human, or are we delivering white glove digital, or high touch human versus high touch digital? And I think what's most important, you guys, is that what we're doing here is we're not focusing on the technology. The technology is 10% of our challenge here. What we're really focusing on, as I said before, is digital transformation. In digital transformation, if 10% is technology, 90% is understanding and knowing our people from an empathy standpoint, and understanding how to embed the work that we do into the processes that they already work in. So, back to answer your question specifically, these chatbots are technology, and by the way, they're dumb technology. I mean, they're smarter than some of our other technologies, but for the most part, they're only as smart as how we build conversations. I'm on a big mission right now to get the human resource function to switch from designing processes to designing conversations. I can design a process without a ton of empathy in mind. I can't design conversations without truly understanding the persona and the empathy of my workforce. And the only way I can do that is to look outside in versus inside out.
Thank you. My question to the audience, if you think that when you look at what really changes the engagement level with technology is, when we begin to introduce emotions in technology. By that, I'll tell you what I mean. For example, if you ask, your Siri, or you ask Alexa, or you ask Google now, or you ask the question, what is the temperature right now? The answer to that could be that it is 40 degrees, or it could say, my God, I think you'll need a sweater. Sarcasm or humor, or when you say that, that sort of engages and it provokes another response. So I think my hypothesis, which I want to know what you feel about it, is, do you think that we are putting too much focus on the tech part of it and not enough on the emotional part of it, and therefore if we did it, it would speed up adoption? What do you think? Anyone who wants to have a go at that? Do you think if we added more emotion, it is going to sort of make it, make adoption? Let's get somebody else a chance. So
I want to say something from the U.S., but I'll hold my comment till later.
Okay. So somebody who wants to have a go at that? Okay. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Dilip and Murkanat from Hewlett Packard Enterprise. So I'll share a personal experience. So last week I was trying to get a PIN activated through IVR with one of the banking companies. I tried 3 times, it didn't work. At the end, I was so frustrated that I decided I will not serve that particular company because the service was so bad. In fact, if they had added a feature there saying if you attempt 3 times and you're not successful, this is the alternate mechanism available, right? Which is the empathy I'm expecting at that time. Maybe my experience would have been totally different.
Okay, so you had your hand up. I mean, do you have a different response? Ma'am, you had your, sorry, please. So the question really is that, does it mean that eventually, until technology becomes a lot more like human beings, we'll need to still have the human interaction? What is your take?
Hi, I'm Priti from Unilever, just 1 year into the organization. And from whatever practices we have within our organization, and we are also trying to adopt to chatbots a lot, I really feel that the basics need to be in place. So for example, there are millions and zillions of policies, and we are just not able to cover each and every of them within our existing database or our chatbot systems. Having said that, definitely an emotional angle will definitely attract a lot of attention, but having the basics right first is one of the priorities, is what I would say.
Okay, thank you. Jason, my question to you, I'm going to put a question before you respond to that, which is, do you think, as a question for both of you as well, do you think that when we are looking at bringing more and more people online in a more inclusive world, when the next billion comes online, voice is going to dominate each of these technologies as the basis of engagement? What is your take? Will it be voice, or will it be, anything else?
Well, first of all, I just have to say I look huge on the screen compared to everyone else there. So, so
your
sorry
impact
that
is disproportionate
and things
too.
like that. But when it comes to voice versus text, I think that we're really talking semantics. I think what's most important is we think about how do people work naturally. And when I say how do people work naturally, I'm going to take it back to how do people live naturally. So I have 2 boys, they're 13 and 10. For those of you that follow me on Instagram or Facebook, I talk about them a lot. I use them in my case studies a lot. They say when they're doing their math, 13 plus 10. And they say, it gives them the answer. I'm like, why don't you just type that in on the calculator? They're like, why would I do that? I say, that's cheating. You have to show your work. They're like, why do we have to show our work? So, I truly think that to answer your question is a concept of digital immigrants versus digital natives and how people like to work. But if I was going to make a prediction, I would say that where we're going is voice. Keyboards are going away. The concept of going into transactional applications are going away, whether it's voice or whether it's text. I mean, all voice is taking text to the next level, allowing me not to type. But I do think that voice will play a key role in this. I just wanted to go back to one of the things that you said earlier that I think is so important, and the woman from Unilever made a really important point, if I heard the company name correctly. The foundation, having an anti-fragile foundation of data, of knowledge, and of content is key before any of these chatbots and any of this technology works. So we can talk all day long about voice, text, we can talk all day long about chatbots, we can talk all day long about augmented and virtual reality, but if I don't have a solid foundation, I'm putting frosting on top of a cake that's moldy, and basically my response is going to be nothing but something that doesn't taste good. So, that foundation is so important, and I would say, when it comes to voice versus text, watch what we're doing in our consumer world and make sure we focus on that when what we bring into the workforce.
Great. When you think about augmented reality or virtual reality, one of the complaints that I hear from when you talk to people about usage is that hardware and software, when you sort of look at it, software has not kept pace in terms of the cost of developing software is still prohibitive, therefore makes it completely something out of reach. And is there a stage in which, until it starts to get user-generated content becomes possible on virtual reality, that we are not going to really see a mass adoption? Is that a valid statement?
That I think has to evolve, Abhijit, because it is true to be able to use augmented reality or VR, there is an investment in hardware, there's investment in software. You have to get at least some kind of a device. You need some sensory devices, plus you need software. So it's not a very easy, it's not, for example, a chatbot in an enterprise, there is already an environment because it can sit on an enterprise, any enterprise environment that you have. For AR, VR, you have to create the infrastructure, which needs investment, and some of that is not very cost effective yet. So there is an element of how fast can it scale, and we are a very large organization, and we are seeing some of those challenges as well, because is physical and hardware infrastructure keeping at pace with the technology as well. Not everybody may not have a camera or may want to use the camera, so you have those challenges as well. Plus, you have the issue of personal devices versus organization devices. Most of the time your personal devices have more features, means it always has a camera, it always has, but will people be open to using their personal devices for something like this? Some of the variables are not inexpensive. So the business case has to be very strong. It's not about, it cannot be just let us do a pilot, because you'll have to, for example, buy hundreds of eyewear, and then it will land in your go down if you don't take it forward. So the business case for AR VR has to be very, very strong to get the investment to take it forward from there. I think that's a big challenge. We have to figure out where's the cost saving, where is the business case, and where is the investment going to come from to invest in this.
Smriti, when you look at, if I'm a small organization, well, I mean, regardless of the size of the organization, let's not get caught by that. But if I'm looking to implement one of these three technologies, which is either chatbots or augmented reality or virtual reality, which is a good place to start? Is there a particular sector that you think has a natural advantage? Are there examples that I should learn from about the risk and benefit? What would be your advice? What do you say?
So Abhijit, it's such a broad world right now, and I was just reflecting on your question that will voice be more popular than text in the emerging technology? And I was just thinking about something that I think a lot of us have read, that now they're experimenting with thought. So the way the change is coming is really blowing our mind. I think the only thing constant is an open mind. What you never imagined is happening. And there are serious successful experiments on inserting thoughts, inserting dreams, inserting a knowledge capsule, right? So my response is really in that context. So there's really no, irrespective of, it's really in the context of my experiences, but like I said, the world is very broad. So a chatbot can be on a spectrum from simple query guidance to helping a person navigate a process or even emotions, and then I guess that will get into the realm of AI. So from that point of view, a chatbot seems to be the simplest thing, but we have seen that VR has been used quite extensively in the learning industry. And
but if I were to interrupt, it's really a learning industry in places where the cost of failure is very high. Example, pilot,
Correct.
crashing a plane is a very expensive
Right.
way of learning.
Right.
Or oil rig, blowing
Right.
it up is a very expensive way of learning.
Right.
So I think from the examples that you're talking about, if the cost benefit, the cost of it is very high, it probably makes sense to invest and build that VR technology.
right.
But are we therefore saying that for an average organization, this
I think
technology
chatbot is
not,
yeah.
the AR, VR is not really up to, ready for adoption? Is that what, you were going to say something?
I will most probably counter that a little bit because, at the end, if you go to the fundamental of what does AR or VR technology help you do, it helps you create experiences, which are immersive and hence change behaviors. Because as we know and research has said that it's a really immersive experience that actually help change behaviors.
Sure.
If you apply that context, you can really apply it to anything. For example, if you're changing behaviors of your customers from loyalty to your competition to your product, and AR, VR technologies can be used to provide that experience that helps change your customers' behavior and mindset. You apply to the smallest thing. For example, when you're getting a new joiner, your initial endeavor is to make sure that the new joiner feels that they have joined the right organization. There is no post-purchase dissonance after taking the offer letter, which is why we try and create the onboarding experience, etc. If you are able to create that first immersive experience and wow experience in the first 24 hours using this technology, then why not, right? On the learning space, I think it has been well proven. I think it is more advanced, also because these technologies have emerged from gaming in a very big way, and that has translated into learning. But that's what it is, creating an experience that changes a behavior or a learning opportunity for yourself. So if you use that principle, I think the potential is quite immense. How much you are able to scale it, might depend on the business case, but I think it can be done at the smallest scale or at the highest scale as well.
Do you have any questions for the audience, from the audience? Do you want to ask the panel any question? Somebody put their hand up, can somebody take a mic at the back out there to the gentleman there who's standing? So if there's another mic, can we take it to him? Yes, sir.
So this question is from your first question. And the question was that in HR, we talk about big data analytics, but I don't see big data in HR. The only data I see in whichever companies I have worked for is my performance management data, my compensation data, my core HR data. Apart from that, maybe some employee feedbacks, that also happens once in a year, stuff like that. So, and I'm not sure whether I know it all. So therefore, question to the panelist, that can you help us identifying the sources to capture data and then make it a big data so that we can analyze and do something about it?
So Abhi, I'll just take a couple of minutes and pass it on to my fellow panelists. I think the first question to ask your organization is, do you have a team dedicated to analytics, right? So we say there are not enough HR analytics, but there is no single person focusing on it. So companies who are serious about it will firstly set up a team, who are rightly qualified and know how to do it. They have the right qualifications on this. This is one. And the sources are really all your systems. your basic people systems, your performance systems, your learning systems. And if I give an example from our organization, we have got analytics on a slew of things, because maybe also the size of the organization. We are like 250,000 plus employees. So, having the right team, what would I say, trawling into your systems actually gives it to you. So it is not challenging or difficult. It is the intent of wanting to do it and staffing it right. That's a typical HR response.
Okay, so I'm going to just add one line to it and say that I think it's important to figure out why do you want to use the data? What decisions are you trying to achieve through that? What kind of changes are you seeking to make? For example, just to take an extreme, if you want the people to, there are organizations which have given people health, tracking devices. For each of these times when we are looking at data, I think there is also a privacy question, there's a consent question, and one of the major challenges is when we are consumers, the notion of consent feels very different as compared to consent when we are employees. So I think that is one of the major pieces where, there is going to be this comfort level that will have to be developed before we can start using it. So there was a question out there. Yes, sir?
Good evening, panel. My question is, there are quite a few startups which are coming in terms of using virtual reality for personality assessments. Because personality assessment is something which the validity and reliability is very important. So what is your take on the outcome of the assessment using virtual reality?
So, Jason, do you want to answer that question? Using...
Yeah, I would like to answer that question. So I believe if I could repeat the question, it's what is the outcome of the assessment of using virtual reality? Was that highlight the question?
Yeah. Can what is the validity of using virtual reality and assessments, when you're looking at personality assessments?
So, I think that what's really important to understand is that there are thousands of different ways to assess someone's personality. There are thousands of ways to address and to analyze someone's capabilities and competencies and skills. There are thousands of ways to do performance ratings. I think what's really important is to understand that from a virtual reality or augmented reality standpoint, that there's probably not going to be a one-size-fits-all that makes sense for every organization, and there's probably not going to be a one-size-that-fits-all for every persona within an organization. So my encouragement very, 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 very strongly would be to find an audience set within an organization where using AR, VR does make sense to analyze and assess someone's personality, to analyze and assess someone's skills, and go very, very deep into that. Usually it would be something where you're watching someone do their work, or usually someone's watching someone conduct an interview, or things like that. And I think that there are spaces for it. But I would say to think that we're going to have mass adoption of AR and VR as a way to assess personalities or assess skills is not just wrong, but it's, to be honest with you, irresponsible.
Okay, thank you. We are sort of coming up to the end of the session. I just want to take a few ideas that we talked about today.
Sir, there's a last question.
There's always one last question. Okay.
So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen and dignitaries on the dais. I'm Twinkle Sharma from Pune Institute of Business Management. My question to you is, as Lamborghini has came up with the their VR lab, so even in business like retail, can VR and AR combination take over this human touch?
Okay, so the answer is, I think we look at technology at this point of time to augment what people can do and sort of to enhance that experience. So there are multiple ways to do that. AR and VR are just some of the ways in which you can do it. There are multiple points of HR tech which is actually attempting to do exactly this. So the answer is, it can't take over at this point of time. That's a very broad statement. Right now, most technology that you're looking at, think about it like a washing machine. A washing machine washes your clothes, it doesn't iron it, so it's specific technology. So technology tends to develop a lot more in compartments before it starts to become broad-based, usage. So that is the reason why it is difficult to say, will it replace? Because human beings are fairly versatile. You know, if you met one human being or you see a photograph of one dog, you can identify another dog even though the breed looks completely different. So those are some of the reasons. So just
and if I know you're trying to wrap up, but if I could just add one thing,
okay.
What's really, really important is if we think about our workforce really uses HR for the most time at quote unquote moments that matter.
Fair enough.
I hope that makes sense. We focus
for moments
on moments
that matter, you know, that's where you could probably use it. Just so, in conclusion, one of the things I want to just really about is that, you know, for you to reflect on is, you know, some years back when social media was evolving, you know, there are some people who started to adopt it. And for a lot of people, they said, you know, social media is really a little toy that, you know, people are using and it's for kids. One of the things to think about is, you know, most technology as a pattern, if you were to think about it, most technology actually evolves and gets mass adoption if there is a playfulness to it attached. You know, social media really became a place for people to post crazy pictures, you know, connect with people, friends. There was no work-related agenda. And suddenly, you know, as you start to see possibilities as it develops, you know, applications, use cases will emerge. So will this, you know, chatbots, whether virtual reality or augmented reality, I think is still in that stage where, you know, social media was a couple of years back. And over time, you'll expect to see far more connectivity, far more data, far more software and hardware. All of that will improve. You know, the fact that the chips are able to play a certain kind of video content actually determines the kind of games that people can play on their computer today or on their phone today, you know. So I think it's a triangulation. So there is software, there is hardware, and then there is the human experience and the mindset. Is this triangulation that actually enables the adoption of technology and how we can creatively use it to solve the problems and to make the experience of working far more enjoyable. So with that, I just want to say thank you to Jason for joining us at a very, very unearthly hour, I know, but thank you very much for doing that. And to Smriti and Srijata for, you know, coming over and, you know, sharing your experience and expertise with us. Thank you very much. And to the audience for participating and for asking the questions. Thank you very much indeed. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Bhaduri, for steering that very, very engaging session. And I thank the esteemed panelists once again. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the conclusion of today. We will now meet tomorrow at 9:40 a.m. sharp for day 2 of SHRM Tech, HR Tech 2018. I'd now request you to proceed to the expo area. Quite a lot awaits you there. You can discover SHRM's top HR influencers in the social network. You can participate in the unique networking event, which is called SHRM Speed Meeting. And last, but certainly not the least, I've got lots of announcements, but this is very important. Enjoy the entertainment and cocktails, followed by dinner. I thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you at 9:40 a.m. sharp tomorrow. Thank you very much.